Tonight on the Online Wine Tasting Club, we catch up on some vines that were planted back in November. Our production manager has a flower. And finally, we talk some common sense. Well, kind of. It's time to go on a virtual tour of the magnificent wines of Spain with the Discover series. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Online Wine Tasting Club's scheduled, should we say, Wines of Spain tasting. We're very
no. And thank you very much for everyone putting up with us. I was off for a couple of days with the dreaded COVID. If we'd done it next month, we wouldn't have to isolate, so it'd be a much different thing.
Yeah.
So my kid had it, my wife had it. My wife lost her sense of taste. Nothing to do with COVID. That's just me.
I was going to say,
but we are here, so thank you for joining us live and waiting and putting up for us a little bit. But we are doing wines of Spain today. Lots of cool things. 6 different wines, 6 different regions, and we've got a new little bit of tech tonight. So hopefully we can start playing with word clouds.
We've got the tasting notes back. Yes, it's finally it's back. We were trying to work out how to do this while doing our new thing, but you'll if you go to towtc.co.uk/taste, or you follow that nice little QR code that's there, but towtc.co.uk/taste, and that on your phone, and that should take you to a little point where you can tap in your tasting notes for different wines, rank the wines in order of your preference, which is a new one, and also tell us, what bad we are. Right. Exactly. So yeah, give that a go. I really hope that works. Caroline's put the link into the chat as well, which is great. But yeah, it's great to have this feature back. So what will happen is, as you enter your tasting notes, if you taste vanilla, say vanilla, and you can enter as many as you like. Please don't swear in it because it's going out in front of probably not children, but
probably my children.
Well, that's true. But yes, it will go up and it will form a nice word cloud. So the most common flavours that people are getting are larger. Isn't that cool?
That sounds like a lot of fun, and it helps me. It means that I don't have to work out what the wine tastes like. I just read what you've said. So, but anyway, what's important today is probably getting wine number 1 in the glass, because that is what it's all about. So tonight we are starting in maybe Spain's most famous region, I would say. And
I'd say that's fair.
And I'm sure anyone who is from any of the other regions will turn around and go, absolutely not, my region is the best region, because, you go to Spain and it's generally a little bit different. You go to a wine bar or a pub or a restaurant in the UK and you have a very, very global wine list. You see a little bit from all over the place, New Zealand, America, South America, wherever. In Spain, yes, you still have these global wine lists, but they're very, very dedicated a big part of their list to where they are. So if you're in Ribera del Duero, you won't see a lot of Riojas on the list. No. If you're in, Rioja, you won't see a lot of Priorat on the list, and so on and so forth, which is really kind of good that they have this identity of these local wines. But I also think when we jump into Rioja, a lot of the times we think of red wine, these big Tempranos, these Crianzas,
possibly with some kind of gold wire wrapped around the bottle, and this is not that. This is a really fresh, fragrant-looking white wine.
Absolutely. So they do make some fantastic whites as well. Not a huge amount. Only about, we've got about 7% of the wine made in Rioja is white, about 2% is rosé, and the rest is red. So not very much at all. But the people who make it, because that's so red, make some really good stuff.
Yeah.
And you can drink it very light, fresh, young like this, but it does age very well. I've drunk some white Riojas back to the early 80s, and they almost age a little bit like a white Burgundy. But let's talk a little bit about what's in the glass here. So this is El Coto de Rioja, and they're they're a relatively big producer in Rioja. They've got 700 acres under vine, and across all 3 areas. So Rioja, you've got 3 main areas. You've got the Alta, the Alavesi, and the Oriental, which
used to be called
Baja, but it's now Oriental. And so they have different holdings all over, which means they can bring these wines together. And the main grape in here is Viura, which if you see in other places like the south of France is known as Macabeo or Macabeo, and it's got a little bit of Verdejo and a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc in here. But hopefully we can jump in, and if the word cloud is working, you can start getting your notes in there.
Well, that's a good one to start with.
There we are.
I
like this, and that is a great start. And this is the biggest thing about tasting wine is if you like it or don't like it, that's your first line to do, and then work out why you do or why you don't.
Right, and work out what characteristics of it you do and don't like. But I get the feeling now we've spoken to various winemakers. It's getting harder and harder for us to interview winemakers because with the lockdowns around the world all ending, they are now back traveling around the world trying to sell their wine like they used to. So it's getting harder and harder for us to find winemakers to come and talk to us. But when we did speak to ones from Rioja, you always got this secret feeling that it was almost like their dirty secret, their little bit on the side, their white wines. They loved making these wines. They really, really like drinking them. They almost, it's not that they're bored with their red wines, it's just this was their fun project that they loved to do, to make, and something that goes with so many situations where you wouldn't want to pull out a rich oaky red wine.
Absolutely, and so many wines are the right thing for the right place. But before we get amazingly bogged down into the world of Rioja, we're doing all of Spain this evening, so it's probably worth diving into a little video, a little bit about the regions, and see what we're going to be tasting this evening.
I think that's an excellent idea. That's the one on the left.
It's too easy for Brits to think of Spain predominantly as a holiday destination. Beautiful sunny beaches, paella, sangria, and there's no doubt of the appeal of the Costa del Sol's climate with, on average, 320 days of sun a year, plus 160 kilometres of picturesque coastline. From the jet-set clientele of Marbella through to some of the first large-scale tourist resorts in the world, it can be one of the cheapest or one of the most expensive destinations in Europe, and that is why more than 12 million people visit every year. Now, Spain has so many regions with really strong identities, and when it comes to food and wine regions, we could spend all day talking about them. So sadly, we can't do that tonight, but let's talk instead about the extremes. Starting in the north, the majestic Pyrenees bring water to much of the country. When you look at parks like Picos de Europa, you could be forgiven for thinking perhaps that you're in Switzerland. Moving south, we pass down through Don Quixote country, La Mancha Castilla with its famous windmills, and then we go all the way down to the iconic deserts of the south, such as Tabernas and Cabo de Gato, which look so similar to Arizona that they were used for years as a film set for Wild Western movies, the spaghetti or paella westerns. As we get closer to Africa, this warmth makes Spain one of the largest producers of fruit and vegetables in Europe, if not the world. Vast swathes of the land, more than 100,000 acres, are covered in an ever-growing sea of polytunnels. These grow produce all year round, which we now take for granted. It's not pretty, but it is effective. When it comes to the weather, if you compare Seville in the south to Santander in the north, the difference is dramatic. It has nearly twice as many hours of sunshine each year, and the average temperatures are 15 degrees warmer in the summer.
Scorchio!
But that unrelenting heat, which makes it so great for most fruits, is not so good for wine grapes. These ripen too soon and lose acidity. So you really do need to pick the right grape for the right region. This is at the heart of why Spain has so many. Now, when it comes to winemaking, Spain has a long history. It's only been in recent decades that their top wines started being held in the same regard as some of the best of Italy or France. Spanish wine is generally thought of as dating back to 1100 BC, when the Phoenicians founded the trading post of Cadiz in southern Spain. However, archaeologists believe that wine grapes might have been growing as far as 3,000 years earlier. Over the following centuries, the Carthaginians and then the Romans came and really helped develop Spain's winemaking techniques. But when the Moors took over in the 8th century, creating much of the stunning Arabic-inspired architecture that survives in so many cities, a general decline in winemaking started. It didn't start to recover until the Reconquista of Spain nearly 400 years later. Now, because of the warmth, Spain was great at making high alcohol wines, as well as the eventual advent of fortified wines such as sherry. This allowed the wines to travel well, and Spain began a tradition of exporting that continues to this day. In the second half of the 19th century, Spanish winemakers boomed as France's vineyards had been decimated by the bug phylloxera, and French winemakers went as far as buying in Spanish wine in bulk to rebottle in France. This is a practice that even continues to a smaller extent today, much to the annoyance of the southern French winemakers. But 160 years ago, it was the French winemakers who crossed the border the other way and brought with them much more advanced techniques which really greatly improved the quality of Spanish wine, especially in Rioja. Following this, many experts moved on in turn from Spain to seek their fortunes elsewhere in the world. Those who stayed replanted and changed the face of the vines grown. Countless old varieties were thrown away in favour of more uniform and more productive selections. While plenty of the older plantings did survive, the most commonly grown grapes in Spain are now Tempranillo, Garnacha, Bobal and Monastrell for the reds. We have Albarino, Verdejo and Macabeo for the whites, plus Xarel·lo, which is mostly used in cava, but is now making some fascinating still wines too. So things were going well, but then came war. First of all, the Spanish Civil War, and almost immediately afterwards, the Second World War. Naturally, this impacted wine production, and things went downhill badly. It wasn't until the second half of the 20th century that another quality revolution started. The vintage of 1970 put Rioja and Spain back on the maps of the wine world. After the death of dictator Franco, winemakers began to introduce more scientific and cleaner winemaking techniques. Now new, young, globally educated winemakers have transformed the scene completely, and the consistent quality plus character of these new wines has led to Spain becoming one of the top 3 wine producers in the world. But in addition to the ability to produce huge quantities of wine, every year we see more singular, iconic wines emerging, showing that Spain is readily capable of finesse, in addition to creating the well-priced wine for the masses. So, over the course of the next hour, we hope to give you a snapshot of some of the diversity of Spanish winemaking. We start with the famous region of Rioja, exploring their less well-known white grapes. We move on to the rolling vineyards of Rueda, and then on to the beautiful coastal Rias Baixas in Galicia, where you could almost be forgiven for thinking you were in Scotland. Then for the reds, we start in the home of Spain's most expensive red wines, a Tempranillo, or in this case known as a Tinta del País, from Ribera del Duero. Then we move on to another way of saying Tempranillo, this time a Tinto de Toro, from Toro, before we finish off in the mountains of Priorat, with a big, spicy, red blend. Perfect for these colder nights. But for now, let's go back to the studio and hear what you think of the first couple of wines.
Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed that little video that just tells you a little bit about the, it's so hard to try to do a country justice in 6 minutes. It's impossible even just to do the wine regions justice, but just that difference between that top northwest coast where, the bagpipes were used before the Scottish used the bagpipes, and crazy things like that. It's a Celtic history up there in the corner, right the way down to Almeria and the deserts and being used in Arizona. It's a vast sort of swing of temperature ranges, which is why it's such a powerful country for producing such a wide range of wines, and why it's such a shame that so few of these are known about. And it's getting better. But this Rioja is known for big oaky wines, and if we look at our tasting notes, which are really cool to see, crisp, peachy, light, quaffable drinkable. That's not the story of an oaked big boy white wine like a Californian Chardonnay or anything. This is subtle.
Absolutely. So on here, no oak, no malolactic fermentation, and it's designed to be this beautiful, drinkable, light, fresh wine.
Now, we talk about not having any jargon in. So for those who haven't heard what malolactic fermentation is, there's a kind of acid that's in the wine, which it tastes of apple juice, basically. There's a lot of malic acid in
that really kind of, you bite into a green Granny Smith apple, that kind of feeling.
Yeah. And it's a way of softening that by turning it into lactic acid, which is more associated with creamy and yogurts and butter and stuff like that. So none of that. This is, but it's a hot country, so you don't get so much acid in it. So that's it's not too in your face. But if you think about that, I find now if I try to think about green apple, I think there is a bit there. I think there is a bit in that.
Thinking and drinking, two things. That's multitasking.
Yeah, thinking and drinking.
Look
What can I say?
that. Amazing.
But yeah, people seem to like it, which is always great news. So, White Rioja, check them out. They are excellent, and they can age. You get your Viña Tondonia. They go on for ages and ages, don't
absolutely. Some really, really good stuff. So let's get wine number 2 in the glass.
they? Should we do 2 and 3 at the same time? Actually,
I've only got 2 glasses.
All
My
right.
word. Let's get 2 in the glass for now. Let's
Nice.
relax. You think he's had a thirsty day? So as we get wine number 2 in the glass and allow people to get onto their tasting notes with that, there was a little note in the chat about tasting notes and WSET, which is the Wine and Spirits Education Trust, which is where you start and you learn a little bit of wine. You can go all the way up to what's called a Master of Wine, and I do in my my other life. I'm a WSET educator, so I was actually teaching level 1 yesterday. What we will do is, when we get onto a couple of the reds, we will run through one of the wines as a proper WSET tasting note, just because somebody's asked. But what we do is, for those who join us on this, we do have our other level, which is our adventurers, which is a little bit more techy, where we do dive more into the tasting notes and more into the WSET. So we can go through it, that second level of WSET, where we kind of really dive into what we're looking at. So we're definitely going to go through the tasting note today. But what we like with the World Cloud on this one is to get everybody's opinions. Your opinion is not wrong. It's what you tasted. If I say it tastes of gooseberries and you've never had a gooseberry, it's not going to taste of gooseberries to you.
And it's one of those things which is incredibly important to take diversity into account, because if you ask a different cultural group what something tastes like, what that glass of wine tastes like, it will have things from their culture in it. It's really interesting experiment to do. So, while we'd say green apples, you might find another country would describe yuzu or something. Exactly. Yeah.
Magic.
So I'm moving just down the road from wine number 2 to Rueda. We'll come back to the WSET thing. So,
and just on
does
the
it have
point
a hint
here,
of tannin?
there would
Good
be
question.
for me no tannins. They press it quickly. There's no skin contact. There's no barrel aging, so there shouldn't be any tannin in
But
there.
you can get a little bit of bitterness that can come in from all sorts of other places that can. It's in the same family of compounds as that. So if you've pressed it quite, you've cracked some of the seeds open, exactly, then you can end up with a little bit coming in from that. But it's destemmed.
We're going down a little bit
that's
of
a bit
chemical
geeky.
analysis rabbit hole here. But it's
that
all
is
fun,
the advantage
and
of having two nerds here on the other side of the table. We can if you want to, but we'll move on swiftly because we're going down the road just past the town of Valladolid. Is that right?
Did you try?
I'm trying. Caroline's put a thumbs up, so that's not bad for not a Spanish speaker.
So Valladolid is a city, and it's halfway between Ribera del Duero, which we'll get onto later on, and this area of Rueda,
which is very up and coming and cool. I mean, it's been there a while.
It has been there. It's been there a long, long while, and this is the thing. None of these wine regions are new. Nothing is new here. A lot of things have really kind of got to grips since the 70s moving forward, but these regions have always been around. They might have not had their DO, which is their legal status, until fairly recently, but they've been making wine. They've been making delicious wine with these grapes. It's not suddenly someone decided yesterday, oh, we're going to make wine here.
It was just that double hit of, first of all, phylloxera, which is a bug that eats the roots of the plant so they die, and it came over from America, like all things that ruin things. Jamie's wife's American, so I've got to be careful what I say here. But so that came over. That was a terrible thing, and then obviously the Civil War was a hugely disruptive, and just trying to farm and do things like that while there's that going on in your country is immensely difficult, and it knocked out. That double whammy really knocked out a lot of regions. They're only just starting to get replanted. There's a region just near in Catalonia, just near Barcelona, and I was off to it a few months ago now, and basically they have turned this entire corner of the country into a massive natural park, and that's involved getting rid of an entire massive Club Med village with about, I think, 60 different buildings and blocks that was all part of that forest sort of development, and they've just raised it. It's just allowed to go back to nature, and they are replanting. They're doing so much cool stuff. So in Rueda,
This, ladies
they're
and gentlemen, is
finding-
called going off at a tangent.
literally at a tangent. But yeah, so Rueda, it's mostly known. It's probably its most famous grape here is the Verdejo.
Verdejo is Spain's white grape. You don't really see it
that grapefruit
anywhere else.
Smack
It's
on.
big, it's powerful.
Wow.
And for me, this is, if you like either your Sancerre or your New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc and you want to try something a little bit different, Verdejo is what Spain can do for Sauvignon Blanc. When you get Sauvignon Blanc in Spain, it's generally a little bit round, a little bit ripe, a little bit more kind of like tropical fruit. This has this beautiful acid, this beautiful grapefruit. I like the white pepper in there. It does have this touch of savoury, which makes an absolutely fantastic food wine, because you've got, sometimes you get, when you talk about food wine, you might want to have something that's got some great acidity to cut through fattiness. But if you just have acidity and there's nothing else, this has this savoury that will stand up to something a little bit. And do this with kind of like almost like a tuna steak would be fantastic. Some big kind of like juicy, maybe slightly chili prawns kind of thing. Definite seafood wine. But this is, we talk about what is that? The classic Spanish dish is your seafood paella. So this does the job with your chorizo, your mussels, your chicken, the whole kind of thing. Will do really well.
But it's a very aromatic, floral grape. So, like you say, in that kind of same group as Sauvignon Blanc, or there's those aromatic grapes. Sorry, I'm really tired. My son has chicken pox at the moment, so I'm finding words hard to say. But it has that floral element,
doesn't he? He likes to share. Oh wow!
I like share. I also like sunny countries. What I did then, or in Spain, share and sunny share. No, anyway, this is a very different Verdejo to many that I've tried from Spain, and I think what we have here is a real expert in those aromatic varieties, because you can't treat an aromatic grape in the same way as you would treat something like a Chardonnay or anything like that. You have to be very careful and delicate, and the most important thing is temperature. It's absolutely key to it. You've got to keep the temperature low, and you've got to keep the oxygen away from it, because otherwise those subtle scents are just gone.
Absolutely, and this is where you've got the Rueda hillside, so you're 600 to 800 meters above sea level. So you've got
rolling hills.
You've got warm-ish days, so you get your ripeness, but you get these cool nights, and this is where you're able to keep this beautiful, beautiful, fresh acidity in there. And the tasting notes in the sub, you've got that green apple, you've got that grapefruit came up first. It's got a little bit smaller now, but it's definitely there. You've got this floral, and every time what I love about this wine, because it's got this complexity that you don't always expect for an unoaked white wine.
No.
It's got this wonderful complexity that
a young wine as well.
2020 vintage. Every time you go back to it, you've got something a little bit different in there. The only thing I would say, the alcohol is
13.5.
Yeah, it's
reasonably high.
Reasonably high, but it does not feel it. It doesn't feel that alcohol burn. Have we got anything in the chat? Any quality notes? Anything we need to know, need to see? Anything the world wants to talk about?
No, everyone's loving the tasting notes, I think.
Good. Oh, it's good to have them back. It is. And it's even better to have my shirts made smaller so people can't see it. But yeah, a fascinating wine. And you've got to remember, and we briefly gloss over this, but Spain is a massively foodie country. They really, really care. They're you don't just talk about ham. There's so many different grades of it, depending on how much of acorns they are allowed to eat, and you have different categories of Iberico ham, where the pigs have to have, let's say, a certain number of square meters each
per pig
to go off and forage for acorns, and it's probably the most free range of meats in the world, and that is so uncommercial and so crazy, and yet they care, and it just shows. So you've got serious foodie.
It would have been lined up for a question. I should have been ahead of the game with this. It should have been a square meters per pig kind of question, per acorn, per wine. But I don't have the stats, so
beef.
Maybe I'll work on that in the break.
Yeah, work on that in the break. Absolutely. And their beef, every bit as good, I'd say, as your Aberdeen Angus or your Wagyu steaks from Australia, and there are certain grades of Japanese steak that probably can't be beaten.
So I think you were talking to me about
Amazing.
that Spanish beef, and correct me if I'm wrong. That was from Galicia, yes?
Yeah, it's the big thing on the Galician beef. They're truleta steaks with the bone in, amazing stuff.
So if we're talking Galician steak,
Perhaps
we could go to
Galicia.
Galician wine.
Oh, that makes a certain amount of sense. I can see buttery. Now, is there any mallow in this? I would be very tempted to say yes.
I think there must be a little bit. I don't think it's complete mallow. There's no oak in there, so it's either going to be a little bit of mallow, or they're going to leave it on the lees for a little bit of time to give that. And once again, we're jumping a little geeky in. You've got three main ways to get this richness into a wine. You've either got oak, you've got mallow that we talked about earlier, or we've got lees, which is where we leave the kind of the yeast and bits in the wine after it's made and give it a bit of a stir, and that gives that bready kind of thing. And 13.5 is, well, we say it's quite high for a white. Everything seems to just be creeping up a little bit over the last 5 years. And we used to think that, 11, 12 was normal for a white, and 12.5 to 13.5 was normal for a red. Everything in the last 2-3 years seems to be about 0.5% to a percentage higher just in general. So I think what we've got to do is...
Does it work? So I had a Pinot Noir last night, which absolutely didn't work. It genuinely didn't work. It was too hot. It was sort of burning my gums. The other bits of the wine were not in balance with it. Whereas I'd say this, I don't... The alcohol, you feel it on your gums primarily, and your tongue.
Absolutely, and it kind of pulls everything in, and you feel that heat and you feel that burn. I don't think you do this, but I think what we've got to look at is what wine really is. I think we talk about climate change, we talk about how things are getting hotter and riper, but it has been like this for a few years. But I think there's kind of a comparison of what we used to think and what we expect wine to be. When I first started learning wine 20 years ago, so this is kind of what the alcohol percentage is, and that kind of sticks. It should be around this.
Yeah.
But you're now getting Californians in 16.9%. A Barossa, Shiraz, and these are very generalizations. There's some great things.
Well, it depends what the occasion is.
Yeah, absolutely. Next month, the online vodka tasting club, because that's what's really important. Hey. A little alcohol, goes a little bit further. It's just, it's less so now. They made me move to Leighton Buzzard, this new studio, so it's not a 45-second walk home. So it's not good for anybody.
So, but I mean, the other, you look at the other characteristics. So when you're doing your WSC thing, I know we're not going to go into it, but you look at where these characteristics are in balance. And for me, the acidity there is very high still. I wouldn't say it's high on your proper scale, but for a wine from a hot place to quite a high alcohol level, that means it's been allowed to sit on the vine for a while, and the acidity tends to drop down a bit. That's still really mouthwatering.
Absolutely.
But Albarino, and we are going to talk, probably for the first time in a while, common sense, because that is what Centennial means. It means common sense. And it's a strange name for a wine which they're trying to talk about this sort of common sense attitude of this region, which is all about nature and fishing and the land. It's a wonderful place to go. But common sense wouldn't naturally say that you should put your wines, your grapes, growing up onto trellises in the sky, especially when you're at the Atlantic coast where winds can batter you and things like that. But no, they build these elaborate trellises that go up and raise the grapes up above any of the kind of dampness and everything, and allow the wind to come in and dry them out and keep them from generating diseases and things. But it leads to a delicious fresh wine, and Albarino is deservedly going through the roof, especially from Rías Baixas.
Absolutely, and I think it's a great wine. It's a great region, and it's such a unique region. There's so many grapes and wines out there that you find an indigenous grape or something that's a bit weird somewhere. You go, oh yeah, it's kind of like Pinot Noir. It's kind of like Sauvignon Blanc. It's kind of like a Malbec, and it's kind of like something you've had before. An Albarino isn't as rare as it used to be. It's really not.
No.
You can see it. You can find it in supermarkets. You can find it in wine shops. It's not
It's
as
even
much
sometimes on the pub list.
it's not as much of a hidden gem as it used to be, but it truly deserves the respect for being a great wine that kind of sits by itself. It has this massive citrus. It's all lime. It's lime.
Lime.
It's fresh squeezed lime juice.
It's
this
also that
floral
kind of lime
characteristic.
leaf as well. I'm kind of getting that slightly leafy
They're
character
all into
from it.
leaves. You're on tomato leaves the other
Yeah,
day. You're now on
yes,
lime
yeah,
leaves.
absolutely.
So you get this beautiful citrus. You get this floral tendency, but it's got this.
It's actually got
It's
a bit of
got high
waxiness.
acid, but it just keeps going. There's such a finish on it. It
There's
just
something
hangs out for a
persistent.
long time.
And like, yeah, I'd say it's that waxiness of lime zest or the lime leaf that just lets it last. And I think that's partly coming from from this lees aging that they do with this in a stainless steel tank, protected from the oxygen and all kept away and all that stuff. There's a lot that goes into the winemaking. It's kind of mad how such tiny sort of decisions and let's allow it to take twice as long as we could get away with because we think it would be better. That's not a commercial decision. Again, you only get to make wine once a year. Grapes come once a year. Apart from Thailand and places on the equator and stuff like that, but near the equator. But
quality wine regions,
one chance a year, which means that if you're a winemaker, and let's say you graduate when you're 21, and you work your way through the winery until you've been cleaning tanks and doing tests and pumping things and all the exciting jobs, but not really, until it actually gets to be your wine. You only then have a certain number of chances, let's say 20 chances in your life to make wine. And
if you don't make it good first time, you might not get another one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, the world could be a brutal judge of these things, so you've got to try to do it right. I think that's really nice. It's quite different to many of the Albarino ones. I think this stands out as having something a bit unique about it. My father's currently cringing because I said a bit unique.
Yes.
Yeah. We associate Albarino with peach. Yeah, this is not as peachy as a typical Albarino. Absolutely not.
Where we have here, and it really this comes from grapes from two different subregions in Rias Baixas. What you'll find with Albarino is generally the nearer to the coast you get, the higher the acidity because it's cooler, more wind coming through. And so this is where you get this. We're only 5 kilometers from the coast here. So you get this high acid. Yeah. As you go a little bit further inland, a little bit warmer, a little bit more moderate, you're able to develop these stone fruit characteristics. So the stuff that's coming from a little bit more inland is where you're going to get more of those peachy things. But what is great...
These guys have got a range from 20 metres above sea level to 200 metres above sea level to pick from. So they do have a bit of a range. But yeah, that's only 5 kilometres away from the sea.
Absolutely. But I think it's the same. What's really important about that, and I think this is a really good comment, that I was expecting it to be more peachy. Not all wines are created the same. You take Barossa Shiraz. There's hundreds of different styles. You take Burgundian Pinot Noir, loads of different styles. And Albarino it's got a core flavour group and a core style. But if you dive into Albarinos and go, I like this, I like ones that are a bit more peachy, I like ones that are a little bit more limey, you can kind of, and it's the same. As you get into wine, as we all know, we decide generally there's red and there's white. And then there's lighter reds and heavier reds, and then we go to this kind of stuff. And we can keep narrowing down. And we could taste 2 Albarinos that are across the road from each other, and they'd be slightly different depending on what happened with the grapes, B, winemaking conditions, stuff like that. But, if we tasted them, the two of them side by side against a Shiraz, you go, well, those two are Albarinos, and that's a Shiraz. So as we dive deeper into things, those little nuances is where we pick up. And that's when we decide that, yes, we like Albarino, but we like Centenino Albarino, or we like Laval Albarino, or we like Corona del Mar Albarino.
Yeah.
And then we like that style, but we really love that producer. Yeah. And that's what's really cool about wine.
I think the other thing that's really interesting about this discussion is that the stuff that comes in that goes to the pubs for a pub Albarino, let's say, that there's something
Pubbarino,
or the supermarket's own brand ones, which are really nice and they are delicious and they do exactly what they are supposed to do.
What the status quo of Albarino is.
Yeah, this is a box that says it will have that, and that is because they follow the recipe To quote,
Where was that? We're doing a Spanish
I
tasting.
know,
What
but you
was
must follow
that?
the recipe. Have you not seen? You've seen Ratatouille, haven't you?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. We did Bruno on the Ribera
We did
tasting.
do Bruno
Okay, we're
on the
done.
Ribera tasting. Yeah, we also did we did lawyers. Anyway, so Karen's trying to get us to hurry up, but they make wine to a recipe. It's a stupid thing to say. How can you make wine to a recipe? Well, you look at the constituent ingredients of the grapes, and they've got these clever machines in the lab. We don't have one in our lab. We're a bit more rudimentary than that, but it tells you there is this amount of this chemical, there's this amount of this flavor, there's this amount of this flavor, and you know what profile you're wanting to get. So you work out which ones to blend together to give you the recipe. That's that end result with those peaks in the right places. Now it's an Albarino that we want to sell in the pub, and it comes in big tankers, gets put in bottles, and different labels are put on it depending on which supermarket it is. Nothing wrong with them. They're great and they're amazing value. But this is where you get character.
And if you want to know what an Albarino tastes like
Yeah.
without breaking the bank to start
Do
with,
it.
it's a good place to start.
We quite often go to the supermarket and we buy a bottle of these wines and we just test each other on them and say, what is this? What is this? And it's easier to do that with a supermarket wine than something where
Someone's doing something a little bit different. with it.
or they've allowed the year to express itself a bit more because it was a cold year or it was a hot year or it was a wet year, whatever. So anyway, that is quite enough wittering on about nonsense like that.
Absolutely. So you were talking a little bit because we're going to get a little bit of wine news. Do you want to start about you and your new toys and your new excitement?
Oh, I could do that.
So he was talking a little bit about all these fun things of kit and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
for those who know, we started before we got onto this online project. We opened up a little wine shop
was a
and
winery yeah.
in Tring in Hertfordshire, where we didn't own any vineyard, didn't own any grapes, but Alex was going to make some wine after training down at Plumpton. And obviously we've had a bit of issue getting grapes from Europe because we've not been able to get them in. But he has promised that this year he shall be making some wine for me to A, sell in the winery, and B, put on these tastings, get out to everyone.
Yeah,
but,
you're going to be my biggest judge. Oh my God!
We had a lorry turn up twice in the last week, bringing new kit in. I think Caroline might have a picture over there of what we've got.
Yes.
So Alex has decided
for Easter.
For Easter, he's bought me an egg. So that's my Easter egg, which is a
600-litre Easter
600 fermentation egg.
Yeah.
And this is his new press to bring our wonderful, wonderful grapes in from wherever they may come from the world and make delicious wine.
New is a slightly incorrect word, because this is quite an old Hungarian press.
New to you.
But new to me, new to us. So our current press at the moment is called what the hell is a hydro press? What it does is you pump water in, and the water fills up this big squishy bladder that squashes grapes. And that's great, but it is tiny. It's tiny. It's literally a sort of a tenth of the size of this, and it is a pain in the neck to use. So you're constantly having to do this. And so we've gone for, most people go for what's called a pneumatic press now, which does the same thing, but on a big horizontal cylinder, and that fills the press up with this big airbag in the middle of it, and that does the same thing. And then it rotates and tumbles the grapes like a big washing machine, and then it squashes them again. We've gone for the traditional basket press, which is here, where just like in the old days, you squash them down from above, and that forms a cake.
Does that mean you're going to be treading?
Well, the treading's separate. The treading is separate. This is so as Jay will say, if you're doing your WSETs, you will learn crushing grapes and pressing grapes. Crushing grapes is all about getting your feet in and doing that, and I've done that. And it's cold. It's really cold. Treading in cold grape juice. It's not massively pleasant, but I can imagine it's much more pleasant if you've got a glass of wine in hand and are doing it with some, friends indeed, and singing a song. But so we've got this cool new kit, and we're going to make some wine, and we don't know what we're going to make, but we're going to get on the case, and we are actually going to do it, and we are going to put it in front of you, and you can tell me I'm an idiot.
Absolutely. And very quickly, the other thing that we want to pop in the news is mainstream blanket statements about wine and sugar. I don't know, and it kind of went a little bit everywhere because it was the old BBC, wasn't it? Covered this.
BBC.
That what is it? There's as much
sugar in some
a glass of wine,
2 glasses of wine, I think, as in a donut, or as your daily allowance. No, it was your daily allowance of sugar was 2 glasses of wine, or if you have a particularly sweet one, a whole bottle is the same as an iced glazed donut. And
So what we've got to bear in
Yeah.
mind in that is
sugar.
sugar is the problem here, not wine. And as we've tasted with the Online Wine Tasting Club, we've had wines, and there are wines that have a huge amount of sugar in, and wines that have absolutely zero sugar. So just mainstream media, they need to do a little bit more research before they start printing things like that.
They printed directly without questioning it. The press release from Alcohol Health Alliance UK, who definitely aren't trying to push an agenda. And what they'd done is they had picked wines which included fruit-based, summer
Fruit-based sweet
berry
wines, pink
wine
Moscatos, and things
Yeah,
like that.
they picked the sweetest wines and said, "Oh my gosh, the sweetest wines in the world have a lot of sugar." So, well, Calspris. But if you have a dry wine, there's calories in it for sure, and you should watch
Is
that.
there?
And you
Oh.
should watch the alcohol that's in it, as we've said before. But don't worry too much about sugar unless you're drinking a wine with sugar in it, which is not most of them.
So anyway,
That bombshell.
this is on. We've done our news. We've done our whites. And for those of you who have been joining us for a few months now, we have our wonderful friends over at El Pasión, a fantastic winery over in Argentina, who each month give us a little update of what's going on. And what's exciting is it may be cold and miserable and wet and horrible in the UK, but because they are the other side of the world, they're getting to the stage of seeing grapes ripen, getting ready, and over the next couple of months we're going to see how these grapes ripen up.
Yeah, Southern
and
Hemisphere. We've
get
seen
into
our first
harvest.
Our first harvests have already started taking place. As I've seen a load of people getting ready to do it tomorrow. Not in Argentina. Argentina's higher. It's colder. That means it happens probably March.
But what we've got here, we've got a little update from what's happening at El Pasión right now, and then we'll be back with some reds.
Hi, my name is Kathy. I'm one of the founders and investors in El Pasión Vineyard, which is located in the UK Valley in Mendoza, Argentina. And I'm also a member of the Online Wine Tasting Club, and I'm based here in the UK. What I'm going to do is to provide you with an update from the vineyard, which we're doing every month.
In November, we showed this footage of Ezequiel, our resident winemaker, planting some new plants. These new pictures show you how these plants are getting on. Whilst they're growing well, it'll be 2 years before they produce grapes we can use to make wine with. The vineyard is looking healthy with grapes in the ripening stage this month. Shoot growth has slowed down and grapes are expanding as they accumulate sugar and water. In warm, dry conditions like in Mendoza, sugar can accumulate too quickly, and altitude helps because there's a big diurnal temperature variation which slows down ripening, allowing flavours and tannins to develop and slowing acidity loss. Sunshine on the grapes develops colour and helps tannins accumulate and polymerise, which makes them less bitter. We will be starting harvesting in March, and I will be at the vineyard then, so you can see how we harvest our grapes. I'm really looking forward to seeing the changes that we've made since I was last there several years ago. The Pinot Noir vines we planted in the shape of a fingerprint are now fully grown, as you can see from the video.
Well, welcome
Hello.
back.
I'm not Alex.
We decided he got too over the top about it. I think he might have just gone to go and play with his press and new egg downstairs. So we've let Alex disappear. He's getting a little bit geeky. So we thought we'd bring Caroline in.
Who's not geeky at all.
And then who knows? Who knows who's going to replace me next?
You're irreplaceable, Jamie.
The badger.
Wow. Yes. Done. Okay, perfect. So whites are fun and some really, really good stuff. But
The whites were good.
The whites were good. And usually I can go, I've got a favourite, but each of them I'm like, there's a time and a place for each of one of them. The Verdejo was cool because it's got this great kind of complexity about it. Albariño, bright and fresh and great, that limey flavour. And the white Rioja, just drinkable. Great
it's
wine
so
to start the
drinkable.
night.
I was thinking that's going to be a go-to for the summer months for me, I think.
So, anyway.
So what have we got next, Jamie?
Red.
Red. I could
Red.
tell that, funnily enough.
Well done by telling the colour. So what we've got, and if you want to pour two side by side, you can. We're going to talk through them kind of separately, but also together. But what we've got here is we've got two wines made from the same grape. So we've got two Tempraníos here. What you will find in Spain as you kind of tour around, and we're not going to deep dive into clones or anything like that right now, but Tempranillo will have different names depending where you go. So in Rioja, you've got Tempranillo. If you go to Ribera del Duero, it could be called Tinta Fina or Tinta de País. If you head over to Toro, which is wine number 5, it'll be called Tinta de Toro.
Yeah,
because
and
it
I
comes
only
from
just
Toro.
realised tonight that it might be
That-
called Tinta de Toro because it comes from
Toro. So we all learn a little bit every day, don't we, Carol?
Yeah,
A little
well,
bit
mine is a
every
very
day.
slow learning curve, Jamie. You know that.
You go down to the south and it's called Centibel, and then probably my favourite synonym for Tempranillo, it's called over in the east, it's called Uva de Liebre, which translates as eye of the hare, because the Tempranillo grape is this tiny little black
bud.
grape that just looks like little rabbit eyes. So that's kind of cool.
So that's probably also why Tempranillos tend to create big, robust, bold reds from Spain, because they're small grapes.
Small grapes, lots of intensity.
Yeah.
And, you know, they do, with a lot of them, a lot of oak aging that gives that richness and that. And what we're going to drink the wine first and taste the wine first so people can get their tasting notes in. Alex is in the chat if you want to talk more about presses and eggs.
Oh, I should move the tasting notes.
Okay, so this one is a, as with the Rioja region, you've got different levels of aging, haven't you, in Ribera? And this is a roble or cosecha. And then you've got Crianza, Reserva, Gran Reserva.
And that is why I steer clear of orange juice.
Yeah, orange juice is awful.
Yeah, you've got to, and grape juice itself is pretty bad. You've got to ferment it to get some of that sugar out. It's dangerous. Sorry.
You
anyway,
mean this isn't one of my 5 a day?
No, that's why we do 6 in the pack, so we're extra healthy.
So, tell us a little bit about cosecha. Does it have to have oak?
Okay, so what we've got is, and there's these words that jump up on wines through Spain, and each region has slightly different exact what the rules and regulations need to be. So I'm going to do a general overview, and for those of you in the chat who know your deeper meaningfuls, yes, there are going to be people who say themselves slightly differently, slightly here, whatever. So you start with just making a normal wine, okay? And your normal wine, there's rules and regulations about what percentage the grapes have to be in there and kind of stuff. So it's generally about 75% has to be the Tempranillo variety.
Yep.
You put some other stuff in. Most of the best ones outside of Rioja are 100% of that variety. And if it just does that, you'll get this little purple label on the back that says Cosecha. Well, in Ribera you get purple. The colours change depending on your region.
Yeah.
So we have Cosecha. We then have Crianza, which is generally about a year in the barrel and then a year in the bottle before release. You've then got Reserva, which is about 3 years total aging. You want to have at least a year in the barrel, and then you can decide to have a bit more in the barrel, but then you've got to get up to 36 months.
Yeah.
And then you've got a where did I go? That was my
Gran Reserva.
You've then got your Gran Reserva. I'm counting up here.
Yeah.
Which is 60 months of aging, of which at least 24 months in barrel, 24 months in bottle. So it kind of goes
No
up.
grans involved.
No gran. It is not a reserve wine for your gran.
No,
absolutely.
No.
But what this wine has on here that you will kind of see in some places is a little word that says roble. And roble translates to oak in Spanish. So what this will mean is you've got a young wine. So this Cosecha level doesn't have to have any oak. It can, it can't, whatever. So this is more of an indication for the customer, for the person consuming, that you can see that there is definitely some oak aging in this. It's usually when you hit a roble about 6 months. So it's not, put it in an oak barrel for the fun of it. It's definitely in there to add something, but you're not getting to that 12-year category to move yourself into a Crianza.
And what we have here, it's a really light, easy drinking, full of fruit wine that is great for just sitting around drinking with maybe some light food or with no food at all. It's made to be drunk and be easygoing, isn't it?
Absolutely, and you know we've got the flavor. We've got vanilla there, so we have got that oakiness. We've got raspberry. We've got a lot of red fruit when we come to Tempranillo. And this is these guys started Viña Mayor in 1986, and their winemaker is the only Spanish female master of wine. And
Which
it's
is
absolutely
amazing.
fantastic
I
wine.
wish I could remember her name. Aru something.
Almeca.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So absolutely fantastic wines. We actually, 2 nights ago, we did a Ribera del Duero masterclass, and we had 2 more of her wines, her
Yeah.
Crianza and her Reserva side by side. So if you like this
Absolutely.
and you want to do a bit more of a geeky dive into a kind of single Spanish wine region, phenomenal.
Yeah.
A lot of fun, the Ribera del
Exactly.
Duero
And we go
masterclass.
into a lot more detail there about the aging of the wines and what's involved in each of those levels on the label. So do check that out. But what we thought would be interesting with this wine tonight is to go through that WSET standard approach to tasting.
Absolutely. Richard Taylor, do you have
So
a
can
pretty
we
picture
get
of
that up on the screen, Alex, so that we can talk through it?
So WSET, as we said, Wine and Spirits Education Trust, you start at level 1, which is kind of red, white, rosé.
Mhm.
Does it have any fruit smell? Does it have this? Does it have that? Yeah, go and you look at sweetness and balance and these kind of things. When we go to level 2, we get a little bit more complicated. And once again, it's not about being right or wrong, because if this is the first time you've done it, we haven't got anything to compare it to. Yeah.
No, and
And-
we're really not here to make anyone feel that they don't know enough. We're
I
here.
thought that's exactly what I was here for.
We're here to help you learn in a fun way. So don't worry if you've never done any tasting like this before, and don't worry if you're not that into it. It really doesn't matter. Some people are, some people
So
aren't.
we are going to run through this in 2.5 minutes,
Yeah.
tops, timing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing we want to look at is our level of intensity. So this is so we break it into appearance, nose, palate, and conclusions. Okay, so on the left-hand side is what we're going to run down, and then on the right-hand side is kind of what we have as our flavour clusters to kind of help you pick some words out that you then might want to chuck into the tasting cloud. So Stranders, nothing to do with appearance, nothing to do with nose, straight onto palate. Do you see that? Smooth. That's how
No,
you study.
I've been doing the old colour against the white bit of
Just
paper.
not tasting along with everybody else. It's
No,
okay,
sorry.
that's fine.
I'm enjoying
So
it.
our intensity is whether it's pale, medium, or deep. So you can either put it against a piece of white paper, so you can see, or if you put it against your thumb, you can see this is almost opaque. Yeah, you can't see anything through there.
Yeah.
So your intensity there is going to be deep.
Yeah.
We then look at our colour. Is it white, red, or rosé? That's an easy one. We won't worry about that.
Is it red?
It is definitely red. But then we've got different levels of red. And for me, this is pushing ruby, if not purple.
Absolutely.
In colour.
I would say if you tilt it against a piece of white paper, you've got ruby in the core, and then you're going purpley towards the rim.
Okay, we're not on core and outside. We're not level 3, darling.
Oh, all
We're
right.
not level
Sorry.
3.
I'm very sorry.
Getting
I'm
too
jumping ahead of
excited,
myself.
Too excited. Diploma over here. So, and what you've got is basically you've got these words on here, which are the words you should be trying to use because everyone then speaks the same language. So we don't go ruby-ish or plus ruby or red bus red. Those aren't colours. Get back to your press.
Yes, come on.
So we then go into the nose. So that's when we have a
Big old sniff.
And this is once again it's about the intensity. Do you get a lot? Does it smack you in the face when you put your nose in the glass?
No, it's pleasant, but it doesn't give you a punch.
It's not light.
No.
You definitely know you've got a glass of wine, but it's not, holy moly, there's so many things. So this I would say is a medium intensity.
Yeah.
And then we look for our aroma characteristics. So we've got primary, which is what you have as your fruit. So we go red fruits, black fruit. So anything fruity is your primary aromas. And then if you have those things, you can kind of have a look on the other side and, either pick your own. But if you're red fruit, is it red currant, cranberry, raspberry? Is it black fruit, black currant, blackberry, those kind of things? And it can be both. You can have red fruit and black fruit and blue fruit. It's okay. So it's kind of pick your own things out. We then have our secondaries, which are our winemaking decisions. So do we get oakiness, which would be things like vanilla, clove, cedar, coconut, those kind of things. We can look at especially, it's more noticeable in whites, the malolactic conversion where you get that butteriness, that creaminess. Or if there's any lees aging, and we can talk about autolysis and flora, and it's getting a bit geeky, but that's where you get that kind of that breadiness, that toast, those kind of things. So that's why you can have, as we mentioned earlier about the Verdejo, those different ways of getting that richness into a wine between those. And then we've got tertiary, and tertiary is about aging.
Yeah.
And that's where we talk about leather, chocolate, tobacco, forest floor, those kind of things. And with this, you've got a couple of bits in there, but not much because it's still a relatively
It's
young
young.
wine. So you don't expect too many tertiary characteristics
No.
from a young wine. So we should be lots of primary fruits. We know it's Rioja, so we're probably in a Robley. So we're expecting some of that secondary stuff.
Yep.
And maybe a little bit of tertiary, but not too much.
Not very much at all. I'm definitely getting a little bit of that clove spiciness on secondary flavours.
Absolutely. So then we move on to having a little taste, and this is our palate. This is what we're all here for, a little bit of a taste.
Great question here.
Cool. We will get to my favourite word, balance. If I had £1 for every time I said balance on this show, I'd have a
Well,
few
you'd
quid.
be up about £3.50.
At least. So we go to sweetness. And sweetness goes from dry to off dry to medium to sweet. 90% of wines you're going to taste are going to be dry, and a lot of reds are going to be dry. This is absolutely dry.
This is dry.
So we then have acidity. And acid is about how much it makes your mouth water. So what you can do is you can do a little sip
I've never been this side of the camera while you do this.
and then just put your head down and open your mouth. And if you feel that saliva build up and run, you know you've got acidity in there, okay? And there's a decent amount. What we've got to bear in mind is this SAT is across every wine on the planet. So this might feel quite high because it's the first one you've done, but it's not like a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, or it's not like if we went back to the Albarino and did the same thing. Nowhere near. So we're definitely medium for here. Tannin is that chewiness, okay? And this is a weird one to pictures, and that's how it kind of dries your mouth out. If you leave your tea bag in your cup of tea too long, you get that kind of furriness. So you can feel that kind of on your tongue. But if you really want to know, you can take your bottle.
Oh, here we go. I've not done this before.
And I
either.
wouldn't recommend doing this in a pub because we're not going around sticking our fingers in wine. But if you get a bit of wine on your finger and just put it in the back of your mouth, you will feel your mouth dry up and it kind of start to stick. So not mega high. As we go higher down the Rioja road, when we go into the reserves and the Grand Reserves, definitely more tannin because we've got more oak, we've got more skin contact, we've got more colour, we've got more aging. So we'll be medium for tannin here, I would think. Alcohol. That's the heat that you feel.
There's a bit of warmth.
There is a bit of warmth.
But it's not overpowering, I
would say it's medium here. It's not out of balance. It's not hot that you're like, holy moly, I've got some whiskey here.
Yeah.
What is the alcohol in this? So 14%.
Wow.
So it's medium. And if we went up to the next level where you could have medium plus, I'd be pushing medium plus. But, a red wine of this kind of quality, you expect to be 13.5%, 14%. So it's edging high. If it's 14.5%, I'd say we're high. So we're kind of driving on the edge. Body is how rich it feels in your mouth. And I talk about milk with this. So you've got skim milk, which I don't think should exist because it's basically white water.
Well, no, it's pointless.
You've then got semi-skimmed, that you've got that little bit, and then you've got full fat. And that's kind of what we should look at about how the wine coats your tongue and coats your palate. So if we have a little look at this, it definitely sits there. It's not massively, it's not like a big Zinfandel or a Cabernet Sauvignon, but we're definitely medium. Flavor intensity, that's self-explanatory. I'm making this a very medium wine, wine. And then the flavour characteristics, we do the same as we do on the aromas, those primaries, those secondaries, and those tertiaries, so you can make those decisions for yourself. And then the finish is how long it hangs out in your mouth for. Is it there for 5 seconds? It's just gone. Is it there for 5-10 seconds? Is it there for like 20 plus seconds? And this, it's there for a while.
You do.
But it's not 6.5 hours, is it, either?
Well, no. I'm not sure I've ever had a wine that hangs around for 6.5 hours, so either physically or metaphorically.
So we once again, I would stick this in medium. And yes, Rioja can quite be medium across the board sometimes. Then we do our conclusion, okay? And whether the wine is poor, acceptable, good, very good, or outstanding. And what we use is called our Blick system. So we talk about balance. And balance is about how everything comes together. So it's not about it all sitting right in the middle of everything. But if something sits, if something's got a lot of sugar in there, it will need a lot of acid to balance it.
Yeah.
If something has no sugar, it needs less acid to balance it.
Mm.
We should put up at some point, in our next tasting, we'll do what balances what. Should we do
Okay,
that?
we'll do that in another tasting.
That feels like
Adventures
quite
level.
adventurous.
Good slide, yeah.
Okay.
Adventurous slide.
Yes, he's not allowed back there to then be back here. He's got the chat. He can put that in. So where did I get to? So balance, and we decided that's poor, acceptable, good, very good, or outstanding. And I think this has good, if not very good, balance. It all kind of comes together.
Does.
We then have our L for length.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we say about the length of finish? It was medium.
It was medium.
Medium. So
Definitely.
we're either good or very good.
Mm.
Yeah. We've then got our intensity for I.
Do you know what? I think for the level of this wine, given it's a Roble Cosecha, I think
it's
there's
very
good intensity.
I think it's very good intensity. And then for C, we have complexity. And it's got a lot of bits going on. So it's
not boring.
And this is for all wines in the world, okay? So I think this is good to very good.
Yeah.
So what we would say for the quality of this wine overall, between our balance or intensity, our length or intensity, and our complexity, then it's either a good to very good wine.
Yeah.
And do we agree for the quality of that from what we've gone through?
Yeah.
What it does? And that's where you come to your conclusion with that. And it being medium doesn't just mean it's bang average.
Well, and I always worried about that in these tasting exams. It's like medium. I'm like, oh, it's just a bit boring. It's just average. But that's not what medium means, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. And we're measuring things, whether they're high or low.
Yeah.
Like when we talk about fruit, we can have all these different fruits and all these different things, and that might add to your complexity at the end. But it doesn't mean that you've got to have high or low acidity to be good, or high or low tannin.
Yeah. Can I just answer? I know there was a question about how do we measure balance, and I know that we've done it from an academic point of view, but just how I do it personally when I'm tasting a wine is
stand on one foot with your arms out.
No, I don't. No, not that balance.
Not,
is we know that your tongue has loads and loads of taste buds, and each area of your tongue tastes different things in food. So part of your tongue tastes sweetness, part of your tongue tastes acidity, saltiness, etc., your gums dry out if it's tannic. You feel the warmth at the back of your mouth if it's got alcohol. So if I am tasting a wine without, and I very rarely go through the SAT structure anymore. In fact, I never do.
You just did.
Well, apart from tonight, I don't. But what I do is, if all of my mouth feels as if it's tasting something, then I think that's a well-balanced wine. On a very simple level, if you're just tasting sweetness at the front of your mouth and you're not tasting any body or anything else anywhere else, then that's not a very well-balanced wine. So that's just kind of on a very basic level, to people who don't want to go through the SAT structure, that's kind of what I would recommend. Just think about how you're tasting things in your mouth and on your tongue.
Absolutely. So there's another great question out here about tannin and body interchangeably. What we're going to do is we're going to...
What?
Answer the question.
Oh,
Yeah,
I feel like we use tannin and body.
Yeah. So what are you get? So go and play with your press or something. So what I was going to say is we've got a question about tannin and body here. What we're going to do is we're going to jump onto wine number 5. We're going to talk a little bit about Toro. And as we taste the wine, what we'll talk about is we'll talk about the body and we'll talk about the tannin and see where the point is and where it's different. So this is, you may have seen Alex in his intro video decided to put a picture of a gentleman with a rose in his mouth. That, for those who want to know our behind the scenes, that is our wonderful production manager, Vitas, who makes sure that all your wines get into pouches and out. And
he's a wonderful man.
And everything that you need. And we bought this wine in, and it was called Flor de Vitas. So we thought we would have the Flor de Vitas himself.
And
there.
the poor lad doesn't know that Alex has done that.
Unless he's watching live right now, but there we go. But anyway, we are
We're in Toro.
We're back in Toro, which is right next to Rueda, and we are drinking Tempranillo.
Do you know what Toro means?
Bull.
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 Yes, it does.
But anyway, you can take Toro away while I taste it to get into a tannin discussion.
So Toro, I now know, is why Tinta de Toro is called Tinta de Toro. Not that I've worked in wine for a while or anything. felt a little bit stupid. But yes, it's up north to the west of Ribera del Duero and Rueda. So it's kind of edging towards Portugal, that side of Spain. It goes way back. So apparently Christopher Columbus took Toro Tempranillo from Toro, even Tinta de Toro, on his mission to discover the Americas in
Good job
1492.
he turned up with Tinder de Toro and just not some toros.
Well, yeah.
That would have been a...
Well, I'm not sure anyone would have survived. But yeah, and the reason that was a really good wine for a long sea journey is because it's got high concentration of flavours and structure and body and tannins, but also a good level of alcohol. So it withstood the journey. But it's one of those regions where there's been a bit of a checkered history because of, all the upheaval in Spain. And it was one of the first regions in Spain to be awarded a DO in 1933. Now, DO, for those who don't know, it's called Denominación de Origen. So it's kind of like appellation. Oh, pouring six here. Come on. Sorry, Martin. So, yeah, it's basically saying it's a good quality region. But then the Civil War hit in the 1930s, and the focus on the winemaking fell away. And it wasn't until the 1980s when a group of winemakers got back together and campaigned for the reinstatement of the DO certification that it was awarded. And since then, it's just come up and up and up and up. And there's actually a lot of investment in the region now. So LVMH so Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, really from a winemaking perspective, have invested there. Other French winemakers, but also producers from Rioja as well. So it's a really interesting region that is producing some brilliant quality wines.
Absolutely, and I think it's a beautiful region. I used to import some Toro when I worked for a Spanish import company, and this was probably 15 years ago, so it's a little while back. But what they used to do is every year they would bring barrel samples, all the winemaker, entire region. And at that point, I think there's about 27, 30-ish. There's just over 60 now, so it's still a small region. They would bring their barrel samples together and taste them all blind with each other. No one knew what anyone's was. And they would just sit and go, oh, wine number 7, could do with this and this, and that would make it. Because what they wanted to have out of their region wasn't, I've got the best Toro. They wanted to create these Toro wines that anybody could walk into a shop or into a restaurant in there, and it didn't matter who the producer was. They knew that Toro was going to be a safe bet. It was going to be a quality wine. It was going to be good, whoever's they bought. And I think that's really good, because you see so many regions that they go, oh, my wine's better than that, and I want to be the best California Cabernet Sauvignon, or I want to be the best Burgundy.
Spanish wine.
Yeah.
So it's massively bold, and what I would say, and we can probably, have you got the wine opener? And we can start looking at number 6. We can get it open.
I haven't.
Who's got it? Someone's nicked it. But what I would say, if we look at these 3 big regions, Rioja, Ribera del Duero. Oh, I've got it.
You nicked it.
Panic, I had it. So if we look at Rioja, Ribera del Duero, and Toro, if you just wanted which one should I have? Because it's all about what you like and what you enjoy. But for a very generalization, the Riojas are going to be your easy drinking, sit down the middle kind of wines, a little bit lighter, fruit driven. Your Ribera del Duero are about elegance and richness. And then your Toros are about fruit and power. Okay, and that's really where you're going to be.
I think that's a really, really good summary, because I often struggle to choose between Chianti and Rioja on that sort of.
Depends if you want an Italian wine or a Spanish
wine. Well, no, but you know what I mean from a. From a wine that goes with lots of food.
I'm catching up with Martin. I've got 6 poured.
A mid-level wine. I think Rioja and Chianti are both really good choices. But we're on Spain, so I'm not going to talk about Chianti.
Absolutely. So what I'm gonna add quickly here is we talk about food and wine pairings, and I turn around and go, Rioja I don't think pairs particularly perfectly with anything,
No.
but goes really well with everything. It is such a versatile wine. If you're going out to a restaurant and someone's having a lamb shank and someone's having a burger and someone's having a mushroom ravioli, that bottle of Rioja can sit in the middle of the table and do really well. If you're having people come around your house and someone likes Merlot and someone likes Cab and someone likes Shiraz, that's going to sit and do an okay job for everybody. It's such a crowd pleaser. It's such a great grape.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And I think sometimes that's why it does get a little bit lost and not enough love because, yes, there are your really big names, your Vega Sicilias, your Pesqueras, your Rioja Altas, the Marques de Murrietas of the world. But outside of that, people go, I like a Rioja.
What does that mean?
Because it's just, it becomes almost a generic...
Synonymous.
This generic phrase. So what we've got to look at is the quality, the levels, because, a Gran Reserva, you want to have a certain dish with that. You want, Gran Reserva, I'm going to sit down and have food.
It won't.
A Roble, I'm just going to have a little drink. And that's what it is. So it's the right wine for the right occasion. And this is the thing, across an online wine tasting, it's not one wine is better than the other. It's one wine is right for this occasion.
Every occasion. And there is a wine for every occasion. But when you were talking about regions, Rioja, Ribera del Duero, Toro, do you know one of my favourite red wine regions for Spain?
Somontano.
No, Priorat.
Piedmonte?
Oh, shut up. No, Priorat, which is in my beloved Catalonia.
It's not really Spain if you ask them.
Well, no, they don't want it to be Spain, do they? But yeah, I lived there for a year, so I feel very fondly towards Catalonia. And Priorat is a region south of Barcelona. It's to the west of Tarragona, and it's just below a mountain range. So it's very well protected, and it's quite warm, isn't it, in Priorat when you get that far south in Spain?
That's why you can grow grapes like Syrah, Grenache, Cabernet Sauvignon, these thick grapes that need that heat to ripen.
Yeah. Alex is doing some fancy stuff with maps. We're getting married. Right. What is our crowd-pleasing white? The white Rioja. Well, I think you couldn't... Do you know what? A white and red Rioja, you can't go far wrong, I don't think, for a wedding. I think it would be a great pairing.
You can't go wrong. But what I would say, like, once again, weddings, it depends how much you like people, how much they like wine. Because you do pay for the fact it says Rioja, because Rioja is a region and you pay. So what my top tip, if you want some value, if you're getting a lot of wine for a wedding, keep the Rioja for yourself and the people that you love. But look at Tempranillo from other parts of Spain, from Navarra, from places like that, and look at Viura Verdejo blends from other parts of Spain. So it doesn't have to say Rioja to be great. Those grapes are grown in other ways, in other places.
Yeah, because we, at the winery, at Tring Winery, it seems to be my second home at the weekend, there's there's a lovely bobal that you have, don't you? Wine by the glass. And that's really, really lovely. Am I allowed to mention somewhere other than Spain?
No.
For wedding wines?
No.
Okay. Well, they also speak Spanish in this other place that I would maybe look at for wedding wines as well.
Uruguay.
No, it's the opposite of hot. Chile. But anyway.
My word. Okay, anyway, back to this wine.
But it's worth giving Jamie a call if you want a hand on choosing your wedding wines. He's really good at that stuff. I agree, Viola. It is very fruit forward. It's a big wine, but there's lots of fruit there. It's not just tannins hitting you in the face, is it?
It's jammy. It's rich. It's got spice. It's got complexity. And it's one of these wines that is drinkable now. Absolutely drinkable now, but you could celebrate for another 5 years and go from there.
It would keep.
But yeah, Priorat I have absolutely loved. There's a phenomenal winery there called Scala Dei, which was started by monks in the 1400s, and they had a bit of a bad time, and I'm losing track of years. But a couple of years ago, it actually snowed in Priorat to the level that wineries collapsed. They lost years and years of like vintage underground. It just collapsed, flooded. It was not ideal for them, for
Not
somewhere
ideal
that's
at all.
not used to having snow. So
Yeah.
we're seeing how these weird things and winemakers having to deal with this. But this is Mal de Mora.
So this is a blend. It's a blend of Garnacha and Carignan, isn't it? With a bitter Syrah.
Absolutely.
Not a bitter Syrah, a bit of Syrah.
So it's
Come on, think.
no, I haven't heard anything. I'm
You've
just
got
going to
nothing,
translate
have
and go, it's Grenache and Shiraz.
Yeah, it's Grenache and Shiraz. But yeah, I love Priorat. If I see it on a wine list in a restaurant, I get very excited.
Priorat is an absolutely unique DO. Well, it's actually a DOQA, which is the top level above.
So it's pretty good.
Well, there's only 2 regions that have it. These guys and Rioja.
Amazing.
And they sit by themselves. Well, not by themselves, but for well-known things. It's not Tempranillo led. It's these different grapes led. So it's an absolutely standalone style of wine. And I like these standalone styles of wine that you go, what's it like? Well, it's got a bit of Bordeaux about it. It's a bit rony. It's a bit Bordeaux.
It is, but
Bordeaux-y,
it's like
but
nothing
it's
else,
warmer.
really.
So it's like if Bordeaux got slapped in the New World and still had some texture about it.
There is a bit of New World about it, isn't it?
But that's just because you've got warmth.
Yeah.
You know?
But interestingly, in Priorat, very little can grow in this region because of how mountainous and rugged it is, and it's quite isolated as well. So pretty much the only things that can grow there are wine and grapes and olives. Not wine. Wine's made from grapes, but grapes and olives. I wish you were married. Hang on.
Isolation.
Where has the chat gone with Alex in charge?
It's got a long way away. But Priorat's got a lovely story. And Alex, you're over behind there giggling. What was the guy's name from Priorat who went up to Paris?
Oh God, I'll remember.
John Jambon.
Yes, it was.
Not John Bon Jovi.
No, so that was literally Priorat. They had 7 winemakers, and it was derelict. And this guy made some wine, and he took it up to the top restaurant in Paris. Put it in front of the sommelier and said, "Would you like a glass of my wine?" And the sommelier, shouldn't I? Poured it for him. The sommelier came back around and said, "I'll taste that again." And he's like, "Well, how much is this?" It's like the equivalent of £100 a bottle. Just made it's like, "I'll take 12 cases."
No.
And that's what put Priorat on the map.
Wow.
He's just like, he took
just
his
believed
wine.
in himself.
Yeah, he just took his wine to Paris. And
right,
goes,
so where are we going to send Alex after he's made his next vintage then?
I've got to be careful because I don't know where people are from on here. I don't want to upset anybody by saying I'm going to send him to Birmingham. No, don't send him this way.
Let's look at the tasting notes. Go on.
Okay, so lots of fruit. We got lots of fruit there rather than sort of because number 5 it was smoke and meaty and things like that. But this is
a lot of cherry. For being a rich wine, it doesn't have the smokiness and the meatiness. Toro like punching in the face. This is, in comparison, quite light and refreshing. I think it's a nice wine to kind of, I say, finish the tasting with. You can do what you want after the tasting.
But I think this is well balanced because my tongue's sort of coming alive in all
and this
different
is the joy
areas.
of blends. It gives you this complexity. It gives you different things to try and all that kind of stuff.
Now, I couldn't see the smaller words on that. Oh, thank you. Because I'm
licorice,
old.
violet, fruity.
Slate. Okay, yeah, there is a little bit of that minerality, I think, and a bit of licorice, definitely, as well.
There's jam and then 2 jammy, so it's just the level of the jam that you need. So, Alex, are you going to try your new technique here?
Oh,
So what we should have now is wines of. Pick as many of the wines you want, and then you can slide them into order from your favourite
to your
quite least favourite. And we'll give everyone a couple of minutes to do that because you're doing it blind, aren't you? So people can't copy. Is that what you're doing, Mr. Taylor?
Yeah.
So he's doing it, so you can't see what other people are thinking about. So, what do you want to do? Do you want me to talk about what's next, or do you want to pop the prices up while people are putting their favourites in?
Let's let them vote before we put the prices up.
Okay, well, that's a good point. Any other
Everybody is
bits?
getting married, apparently, and one person is marrying them.
Okay, I'm going to have to watch this back so I can see the chat.
All I have to say is no clouds allowed in the sky.
Maybe I need to get married again.
Okay.
What do you think my husband would say about that?
Don't know if you've got time between tastings.
Yeah, I know. We seem to be doing one every other day.
Right, so we're
So where's Priorat on this map? Then?
Right.
so Barcelona. Go right. Go down.
Yeah, go down.
Down.
About,
Stop.
about
Stop.
a bit left.
To the
bit
coast.
left.
Yeah,
yeah,
there,
about
done.
there. That'll do.
Hey.
So is it on the River Ebro as well, like Rioja, which is off?
No, I don't think it is. I know it's just below
No, it's on the mountains. It's on the mountain range. Well, we're gonna have a game of pin the winery on the wine map.
We could do that.
We do that.
Oh, that would be fun.
Got another game. So I
do that on
know
our team night out.
we've run mucho past time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what's happening next, and then Alex is going to give you the prices, and then we're going to see what the wine of the night is. Everybody happy with that? So
Yes, boss.
Yes, I know. So next month, and it comes around really quickly because we're 2 weeks late on this one. So we're the 9th of next month
like
to do
next-
Discoverers,
A couple of weeks.
and we are doing the wines of Austria. So I'd say, John, we're going to have to charge you, a fee for advertising. So we're doing wines of Austria, which is going to be a lot of fun, some cool grapes, some funky stuff, and I'm slightly obsessed.
You are slightly obsessed,
I
but
like Austria.
you've got me into Austrian wine. They're amazing.
There's some really fun stuff. And for the adventure series, we're doing indigenous grapes. We're going to find some cool places in the world that the grapes
or
grow just there. and do
Tocanus
that
or
thing.
something, as Alex keeps telling
also
us.
has to have a different word for that.
Yeah, because
So that's
he's
coming
posh.
up. If you've liked tonight and you've enjoyed that and you want to do a little deeper dive into Spain, we've got packs from our Ribera del Duero tasting available on the website, pre-recorded video, which you can choose to watch, or you can absolutely just choose to ignore us and enjoy the wines.
Taste the wines yourself.
and
But
go
it's
from
well worth it. There were some really delicious wines.
some fantastic wines, a rosé, some whites, and then 4 reds. But yeah, let's have a little look at wine of the night.
Can I just say, Alex has taken it away from snack chat and on to marriage chat.
Yeah. Who wants to find out what the wine of the night is, or should we do the prices? Let's do prices.
Yeah, let's do prices.
I think there's some good value out there tonight.
Oh my God. That Rioja Blanco is amazing value.
For £9, that's sensational.
That's incredible.
It's less than 9
But
quid.
also, I was sure the Priorat would be more than that as well, because Priorat isn't cheap, really. I think they're all brilliant.
I think they say good value for money. They're good drinking. Before the results go up, you want to pick your favourite red and your favourite white?
I will. I'm going to go for the Rioja Blanco. I thought it was an absolute banker. Really easy drinking. Definite for summer barbecues. And I've got to go for the Priorat because I love Priorat.
Mr. Taylor, your red and your white?
Verdejo and Priorat.
Jamie.
Albarino. And Priorat.
Yeah, the
Maybe
Priorat
Toro.
was good.
Maybe
Let's
Toro.
see if it reflects
See if we're right or we're very wrong.
What happens? Let's flick it on now to the results.
Oh,
look!
Look at that! Priorat and Rioja Blanco.
Wow.
I'm glad I'm going with the masses on that one.
Right, absolutely. And we've got one final question, don't we?
We do.
Oh, do
I
we?
just need to-
Is it how much did Caroline annoy you?
No, we didn't have time for that, unfortunately. So as he gets that through, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for bearing with us the last couple of weeks. I know you've probably been chomping at the bit, waiting to hear us burrow about.
Yeah, we are sorry that Jamie's so sickly.
Yeah, I know. What can you do?
What are you doing, Alex?
Trying to get the last question.
Actually, while you're just doing that, I am going to say we are tomorrow probably going to be sending you out a little questionnaire, a little survey. We're wanting to find out what people love and why, and what people want us to improve on and why over the coming months. So I'm going to be sending that on email tomorrow. If you could spare just 10 minutes of your time to let us know some really valuable feedback, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Fantastic.
End of public announcement.
Yeah. If you put in the first thing, having Alex able to do his tasting slider, that would be great.
Sorry about that.
I don't know if you saw what we put up as the final one. Have you had a good night?
Right. See
or
on
yes?
Oh, you
So,
boys are so silly.
I know. But anyway, it's been a lot of fun. It's been really exciting. It's good to see you all again. I'm happy to be back, and I've not
Yeah.
lost my sense of taste. Otherwise, put the
Well, not
the
in
badger in
wine
the seat.
anyway.
Exactly. Co-hosts maybe, wine less so.
Whatever.
But anyway, have a wonderful night. We're going to go to the
Oh.
credits.
Thank you, Hannah.
Look at that. Everyone's on your team now.
Yeah, everyone loves Caroline.
Anyway, cancel it before everyone's too nice to Caroline. She won't get out the door with her ego. Anyway, have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Desposito, oye, ¿cómo va? Vino tinto, huevos, tortilla. Yeah. Arranche, Sánchez, Vicario, Grabbio, flamenco, guitarro. Pimientos de patrón, una paloma blanca, jamón, jamón. Enrique y Julio Iglesias taught me all these Spanish phrases. And I just want to say muchas, muchas gracias. Te amo.